Get ready for Changing Worldviews with Sharon Hughes, the 30-minute show packed with an hour's worth of information, bringing you familiar guests on important issues such as immigration, education, the Middle East, culture, religion, and the changing worldviews of Americans and the world. You've seen her on Fox News, you've read her on the World Wide Web. Now here's Sharon.
For such a time as this.
Freeing the minds of the brainwashed masses.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in to this edition of Changing Worldviews. Today, U.S. Bill HB 5337 has a plan to nationalize retirement wealth. On May 6, 2012, Lauren Schmitz, a research analyst at the Bernard L. Schwartz Center for Economic Analysis, introduced the bill. This 401k IRA deprivatization is the brainchild of Teresa Gilarduzzi, whom through funding from the White House and the Ford and Rockefeller Foundations engineered a new, quote, regulatory and tax incentive. The purpose is to force Americans to convert their retirement accounts into government-managed accounts. What? The daughter of Reverend Jeremiah Wright, President Obama's pastor for years, and 12 other Democrats have been charged with embezzling $16 million in federal health grants that should have gone to AIDS charities and other programs for the poor and needy, according to the Sun-Times.
Wow.
Get ready for singularity. It's closer to reality than we think. Hooked to a computer, your brain will be able to answer a question before you even knew to ask it. Ray Kurzweil, who is one of the poster boys of singularity, says that by the year 2030, reverse engineering of the human brain will have been completed and non-biological intelligence will merge with our biological brains. And according to an indictment brought against Hamas in the Jerusalem District Court, the terror group has succeeded in mobilizing activists in a variety of fields, including religious, education, and financial services. The goal has been to, quote, bring the local Palestinian population closer to the ideology of Hamas and to build institutions with the aim of advancing its goals. And that is what we're going to be talking about today. You don't want to miss it. Stay with me. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Sharon Hughes, coming to you from the Wild, Wild West, and we mean wild.
An Israeli opposition has slammed Secretary of State John Kerry over his remark that it would, quote, be a mistake to pursue Palestinian recognition of Israel's right to exist as a Jewish state. And as we reported, in the meantime, Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas met with President Barack Obama at the White House, reiterating his opposition to recognizing Israel as a Jewish state and also to insist on a construction freeze in Israeli settlements in the West Bank as a condition for continuing peace talks. There's no surprise here. Abbas, since his 4-year term began in 2005, Abbas has been able to dance around the red lines to avoid compromises and continues to say repeatedly, quote, we will never sign an agreement recognizing Israel as a Jewish state. And to talk about this and other developments around the world as we look at wars and rumors of wars is my guest Ted Belman, direct from Israel, who I spoke to earlier. He's the editor of ISRAPUNDIT. Here's that interview.
Ted Belman, editor of ISRAPUNDIT, direct from Israel. As we talk about the two-state solution, is it dead? And should the United States cut a deal with Israel and just end the conflict? But some things remain constant. Palestinians won't recognize Israel as a state. They want Jerusalem, and they want more land. But Israel doesn't want to divide Jerusalem, and on it goes. Well, what should be done, and what should the U.S. part in all of this be? There are so many things that are at play here, but they have a Palestinian state petition that you can be a part of if you'd like to. I encourage you to go to www.petitionbuzz.com/petitions/no to Palestine. and you'll be able to sign the petition, which will go to Prime Minister Netanyahu, and the undersigned of the petition are urging him to stand strong and say no to a Palestinian state, which means that for them to have a Palestinian state is that Jerusalem must be divided. They must have more land and so forth. And we have Ted Belman with us, editor of ISRAPUNDIT, direct from Israel. And we really want to settle some issues as regards to the two-state solution. Is it dead? And what does Ted think about that? I've already given my opinion, frankly. Ted, I don't know if there will ever be peace in the Middle East until Jesus returns. You know, it's pretty crazy. What do you want to tell our listeners about this whole idea of what's going on?
First of all, President Obama is trying to force us to accept a bad deal, a deal not based on law or history. And he has agreed with the Palestinian position that we should go back to the 67 lines and divide Jerusalem. Now, we have no legal obligation to go back to the 67 lines. From our point of view, Resolution 242, which ended the Six-Day War, simply said we have to withdraw from some of the territories and end up with secure borders. So what is being offered to us, maybe, and I'll come to that in a moment, is just so far removed from our rights and our entitlement that we don't want to go there, and we say that there's no justification for President Obama's position and for the Arab position other than that they want it. Now, one of the big issues now is who's going to get blamed when the negotiations fail. And the pressure is all being put on Israel because Israel is the only party expected to make concessions. And there's a presupposition that the Arabs want a state, that they want a two-state solution. But the reality is they don't want a state. They want to destroy the state of Israel. And a deal can never be cut because they are religiously and ideologically against the idea of creating a Jewish state in the Middle East. And they will never agree to a two-state solution. So that's the reality. So in Israel, those who accept that as reality have to think, well, if not that, which we hate, what then? And it would be not a problem whatsoever, except for the fact there's 1.6 million Arabs living in Judea and Samaria. That's as opposed to maybe 360,000 Jews living there and another 360,000 living in Jerusalem, the expanded part of Jerusalem. And so we would annex Judea and Samaria in a heartbeat, but there's great resistance to bringing in another 1.6 million Arabs into the country and then have to be confronted with the idea of citizenship. It would increase the number of Arabs in Israel and the expanded Israel to about 1/3 of the population. Now, normally speaking, in a way that's okay that there is such a sizable minority, but when we look at the minorities in Europe, the Muslim minorities representing maybe 5 or 10% of the population, look at the havoc they're creating. And just imagine where the Palestinians have been brought up to hate Israel and to destroy Israel, trying to live in peace and harmony with a minority that's so large is very frightening to many Israelis. So there's a suggestion that maybe we should only annex, let's say, 50% of the land and take the land where the Jews are a majority and leave the Arabs in the land where they're a majority. And that's what Naftali Bennett, a minister in the present government, he is arguing for that solution and give the Palestinians all the autonomy that they want. But that removes the problem of us having to digest, really, 1.6 million additional Arabs in the country. We have nothing against Arabs except that they want to kill us, and everything starts from that.
I just pulled up an article that WorldNet Daily had done talking about how the Obama White House put out a video of Israel, the map of Israel, and it erased Jerusalem from the map of Israel. And I think it was the Washington Free Beacon who first reported that the video from the White House shows the Golan Heights as part of Syria, Jerusalem is depicted as part of the West Bank, and northern Israel is shown as part of Lebanon. And in the WorldNet Daily report that I mentioned, the White House refused to name the capital of Israel not once, but twice, as the two most senior White House correspondents cornered Obama's press secretary, questioning him about it. Was the Obama administration, did they consider Jerusalem or Tel Aviv to be the capital of the Jewish state? So, these kinds of things don't get out into the mainstream media. I don't think the average American knows really some of the stuff that's going on. And all of this just muddies it up, and there are those that are saying Israel's the bad guy because they don't want to, participate with the peace process. But when you've got stuff like this going on, who would?
The peace process is not really a negotiated process. Let's assume that I own a house. I have title to it, and I'm asking $100,000. That goes back a few years. But if somebody wants to make me an offer of $50,000, we'll never have a deal if that person won't increase the offer. And so negotiations mean you have a right to say no. But nobody gives Israel the right to say no, and they place expectations on them that they'll accept whatever demands the Arabs are placing on Israel, and that's not a negotiation.
Right. Why do you think that is? Do you see the Obama administration radically different than other administrations recently with Israel? I was reading your article where you were talking about how President Bush, days after we had the invasion in Iraq, put out his vision speech with the roadmap, and he did have some provisions that, of course, have not been met. But what is your take? Do you believe, as many conservatives do here in America that love Israel, that this administration is not really a friend of Israel, as is seen through what John Kerry's doing?
Well, first of all, let me tell you very clearly, and this is something that will shock a lot of people, the U.S. government, not the people, the U.S. government, including the State Department and all the different arms of the government, right from the creation of the State of Israel, wanted it stillborn. And they even had an embargo of American arms on Israel at the time that they were attacked by 6 Arab countries. And from that time on, Israel managed to survive and prosper. And ultimately in 1967, when the American arms embargo was still on, Israel had that brilliant victory. America, after that victory, was committed to forcing Israel to go back to the ceasefire lines from 1949, which people call the 67 borders, but there were never borders. But that's been American policy from day one, is to force us to give all this land up. And the only difference between Obama and past American policy is that Obama is prepared to play more hardball than other people have. And they're prepared to really put pressure on Israel, have Israel be sanctioned, stop supporting them in the UN. And that's maybe the difference with Obama administration.
We have to take a break here. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Changing Worldviews with Sharon Hughes, the late afternoon commute show that knows the importance of bringing concise commentary on the day's news.
Bibles that were later burned by the U.S. government. These holy books were confiscated about a year ago at Bagram Air Base in Afghanistan. An independent film aired by the Al Jazeera network had shown evangelical soldiers worshiping at Bagram and talking about ways to share their faith.
One of my proudest moments was when we were able to repeal Don't Ask, Don't Tell. It was not an easy process. There were some who doubted whether we'd ever get it done. This is done.
No sitting president has ever done what Barack Obama did yesterday.
And it's not just a matter of head, it's a matter of heart. It's who I am. It's what I care about.
It's time to wake up, America. Radical agendas that are finding ways to mainstream themselves into public policy, including here in the United States. It's time to pay attention and read between the words of the speeches of our leaders, from our president all the way down, and take off the rose-colored glasses and look at things as they really are.
If you'd like to change the world, won't you partner with us? For a donation of $15 a month, you'll receive our monthly Best of the Best program on CD and Sharon's monthly Saying It Like It Is letter. Just go to changingworldviews.com/donation page and sign up online. Or send your first $15 donation to Changing World Views, P.O. Box 750624, Petaluma, California 94975-0624.
Thanks for staying with me as we look at wars and rumors of wars. Ted Belman, direct from Israel, the editor of ISRAPUNDIT.
And I noticed that Jordan's king came out negatively against Israel, so that's mounting. We certainly know what Iran's point of view is.
Jordan has a very special thing. Everybody thinks, it's a nice smiling king. They're very, very nice. First of all, 80% of the Jordanian population are Palestinians, and they are discriminated against and not given full voting rights, and not given jobs in government or whatever, and considered an enemy. And Hussein, or Abdullah, pardon me, wants to take away their citizenship. And that's a big problem. So it's his interest. He looks upon the Palestinians as his enemy. And what he wants is that when a peace agreement, if ever one is created, two things. He wants the Palestinians in his country to leave and go back to the West Bank, and he wants Israel to remain on the border to prevent the border from threatening his kingdom. So he was very upset when Kerry wanted to remove the IDF and put in its place NATO, which is a joke, or even American soldiers, which are also a joke, and I'll explain why. Whenever NATO soldiers are supposed to keep the peace, if somebody starts shooting at them, they run away. Their countries take them home. And Israel always takes a position, nobody is going to defend Israel like Israel defends Israel. And even American troops there, they're not ready to go to war. They're not ready to put themselves in a position where they're blown up all over the place in Israel like they were in Iraq. So the whole idea is ludicrous that Kerry is suggesting. Only Israel can do the job. America doesn't want that. They want to give the Arabs what they want, regardless of whether they're entitled. That's American policy.
Well, I noticed also there's a lot of buzz on the Internet about the Pope Francis, who's supposed to be visiting Israel in May, that he's going to supposedly visit the Palestinian Authority and Jordan. But there is a lot of buzz about the fact that he may be siding with the Palestinians. What do you hear there in Israel? What's the perspective from Israel regarding his visit?
Well, there happens to be a story I haven't kept up to date as much as other stories, but I think he's considered a very pro-Jewish pope. Nevertheless, it's problematic in that there are so many people, so many churches who really are trying to force Israel into position for the benefit of the Palestinians. Why, I don't know. The Muslims throughout the Middle East are killing Christians all over the place. Right. And the only place Christians are safe and growing in population is in Israel. And here's one that'll surprise you. A higher percentage of Christian Arabs graduate from university in Israel than Jews. That's a fact.
Wow, that's interesting.
So they're very well treated in Israel. We don't kill them like in all the other countries, and yet the Christian churches, with the exception of the evangelicals, are very demanding, and they're very critical of everything we do.
Yeah, and unfortunately, Ted, we've been watching this, as you well know. This is not your first time with us, and we're seeing a movement here in America where people are questioning in the church, well, why do we need to, or why should we stand with Israel? There is a movement in the younger generation that's even moving towards sympathy towards the Palestinians. So it's an amazing thing that's going on. We have to take a really quick break here. When we come back, I want to talk more about these things with Ted, and also ask, which I know a lot of our listeners are interested in, this whole idea, is there a third temple being built? We know there's supposed to be one, but what's going on with that? Is it happening now? Stay with us. We'll be right back.
And now, with a look at what's happening on the legal front, the president of the Pacific Justice Institute, Brad Dacus.
There is a growing LGBT advocacy culture in China. The problem is that groups like the Beijing LGBT Center and Queer Comrades want to block people struggling with their sexual identity from obtaining mental health services. Well, Pacific Justice Institute has been dealing with this civil liberties issue in California. In China, these groups go even farther by picketing mental health clinics and pressuring officials to revoke the licenses of these clinics. A reliable source reports that the U.S. and British embassies are partly funding the Beijing LGBT Center. I'm Brad Dacus.
To find out more about the legal edge, call 916-857-6900 or log on at pacificjustice.org.
Exposing the worldviews behind the political, cultural, and ideological wars being waged in our nation and world, Sharon packs an hour's worth of information into every half hour with news you can use.
We have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it.
Things are being put in place that could change the American way of life forever unless we get off the wrong paths and get back on the right ones that are proven, safe, secure, and healthy for our generation and future ones. We're going to be in trouble.
A new world order.
Never waste a good crisis.
A world order that I think all of us would like to see. The United States does not accept the legitimacy of continued Israeli settlements. It is time for these settlements to stop.
Hamas exists to destroy Israel. Their mission is to kill Israelis, to kill Jews.
However, just because evil men have plans to wipe our freedoms off the map, or Israel off the map, or whatever, in order to rule the world, it doesn't mean that it will happen. At least it doesn't have to happen here in America.
Won't you help reach even more listeners with a financial donation? Go to www.changingworldviews.com, donate page, and give either a one-time contribution or become a monthly partner. Or send your check to Changing World Views, P.O. Box 750624, Petaluma, California 94975-0624.
Thank you, everyone, for staying with us. I've got with me today Ted Belman, editor of ISRAPUNDIT, direct from Israel. We're talking about the current situation. Ted, before we get into the question regarding a third temple, there are so many issues that surround this. If you were to bottom line it to the top 2 or 3 concerns that you have, as I believe, you were in Canada, now you're in Israel, you are a Jew, concerned about these issues, what would you want to tell the American people, number one? And number two, what would you want to tell the American church regarding what's going on right now and your greatest concerns?
Well, first with the American people, they are by far the best friends that Israel has. And studies have been shown that they favor the Jews over the Arabs maybe 3 times more. Roughly around 70%, a little bit less, favor Israel, and that percentage has remained constant for decades. Now, that's remarkable given the fact that there is so much propaganda defaming and delegitimizing Israel. So thank you to the American people. And American people represented in Congress. Congress are very supportive. It's the State Department who are very linked in with the Arabs, are the ones who are trying to force us to go back to what has been called the Auschwitz borders. The 67 lines are just a suicide trip. So that's the first thing. I am very much aware that there is, although the evangelicals have been strongly in support of Israel, there is a movement starting among them that is anti-Israel and taking a different position because, after all, why should we support Israel who's done this bad and that bad and this bad? And all that is propaganda. All that has no relationship to the facts. So I warn everybody that it is extremely important to do your homework. Otherwise, you'll fall prey to all the lies and the demonization of Israel. So that's what I have to say. I'll give you another example. I went to a lecture last night. There was a Palestinian Christian bishop from the Lutheran Church, and he was participating in a sort of a ecumenical attempt to find peace in the Middle East. And he was an Arab, but a Christian. And he started out his talk with all kinds of wonderful, beautiful platitudes about justice and people and equality and all kinds of stuff like this. And then he progressed on to the kind of solution he thought that Israel should do, and that would be fair. Now, the solution happened to be exactly what the Arabs are demanding, namely that we go back to the 67 borders and we allow the repatriation of millions of Arabs, which would destroy our country, and divide Jerusalem. So here's a guy who's supposed to be conciliatory, yet he argued adamantly for the Arab position. So I had an opportunity to ask him a question. And I asked him, you keep, with all these platitudes, and you mentioned justice. And I said, what is justice? One man's justice is not another man's justice, and you can't have justice removed from the law and the facts. They are based on law and facts. So when he rebutted me, he said, you're right, and so he essentially said I shouldn't be calling for justice, but the law and the facts, he said, is Resolution 242, which demanded that a two-state solution and that Israel go back to the 67 lines. Now, the truth of the matter is 242 never said that.
Yeah,
242 didn't even mention a two-state solution, and certainly didn't mention us returning to the 67 lines. So here he was, a bishop, supposedly in the know, and arguing that this is what 242 said.
Yeah.
So you have to be careful.
Yes, you have to be careful.
Well, we will continue that interview with Ted Belman, but ladies and gentlemen, I encourage you to tune in on Friday when my guest, Sandra Teplinsky, author of Why Still Care About Israel, will take a look at what's going on from another angle, so you don't want to miss that show. In the meantime, I encourage you, as always, to stay informed of what's going on and pray the news. This month at Changing Worldviews is Remember History Month. Those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. While there are various versions of that quote, nonetheless, its sentiment rings true to all lovers of truth. Remembering history, in other words, learning from it, is a key to not repeating it. And all month long, we are going to be pointing to and pointing out history, real history, not the rewritten versions. And to go along with that, our special offer this month, yours for a donation of $25 or more, is a 4-part CD series with 10-time Pulitzer Prize nominee Edwin Black on the War on the Weak and IBM and the Holocaust. It's all about Hitler, Israel, and the United States, a very important part of history that we may think we know, but have we learned everything from that part of history we need to? And are we passing on real history to our kids and our grandkids?
Oh, in fact, Hitler wrote fan mail to the associates of Margaret Sanger of Planned Parenthood, who also was a eugenicist and who wished to eliminate the existence of 2/3 of humanity through her methods. I can tell you that Mia Jamaad is attempting to do in 12 minutes what Hitler could not do in 12 years. Virtually all forms of genocide in the last 200 years that I have studied have emanated and been cultivated at the university level.
I'd love to send you this 4-part CD series, War on the Weak and IBM and the Holocaust with Edwin Black, for a donation of $25 or more. Send your check to Changing Worldviews, P.O. Box 750-624, Petaluma, California, 94975-0624. Or you can go to changingworldviews.com, click on the donate button, and the one-time donation for monthly special, changingworldviews.com. ISRAPUNDIT.com. Dwayne will give the address again.